The interior is okay. I'll just call it okay. This, obviously a problem. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Got a new build for you. So I have a couple builds that are in the works right now. For example, my Dodge Ram 3500 Mega Cab build. We got some things to wait on for that. So I thought I'd do an overland build. This is how you operate the outdoors. This is the most capable off-road overland rig I think you could buy. They're still readily available and still reasonably priced. When I first got into Landcruisers, I was all about the 80 series. I've had them all, the 40s, the 80s, the 100. The 80 series are the most capable because in the 90s, as Toyota was developing these, they invested a lot in them. Solid front axle, the ability to lock the front, center, and rear differential, all-wheel drive or full-time four-wheel drive. Very capable rigs that were really balanced. I'll show you some of the reasons why I picked up this particular 80 series. This is the FZJ80 series. Things to look for and some plans for this build. I want to get you motivated for this because it's going to be pretty detailed. I'm going to do a lot of investment and showing you guys how to do this, not necessarily on a budget because I'm going to blow through my budget. You can do that on a set of bumpers on this rig, but showing you the right way to invest and where it's needed versus where it's not. Very capable out the box. You really don't have to do anything with these rigs, but I'm going to show you what to look for. All right, so I'm at the front of the bonnet, as you would say. You see this rust? Pretty bad, but it doesn't matter because I'll get a used hood, not a big deal. I've already spent about an hour just dressing up the TLC in these rigs. Most of these vehicles, what you'll find is a lot of people who off-road them, overland them, use them for what they're intended to be used for. They typically don't keep up on the TLC because it requires you to actually be mechanically sound. And if you take these things into the dealership, they have no idea what they're doing. I mean, again, this is a 1996 Landcruiser. This thing is 29 years old, and those dealerships are used to dealing with newer model vehicles. These vehicles are very easy for you to do your own maintenance and TLC, and people just don't do it. That's a consideration for when you're buying one. When you're buying one, it might look good on the surface, but as you get underneath the hood, you're going to want to check some things to make sure that it's been maintained. Because if it hasn't, that's where you're going to spend a lot of money and getting it up to par before you start the build, right? You need to make sure all the mechanical components of this, the transmission, it's not going to blow a head gasket, all those things are done prior to picking it up. So when I looked at this, the first thing I noticed on this head is this valve cover gasket was leaking and it had a lot of buildup of oil all over the place. So that was pretty easy to get rid of, but that doesn't mean I fixed the problem. The first thing I ordered was a gasket set from AutoZone. Relatively inexpensive, but you need to get that done to make sure everything's sealed up. One of the things that goes on these are the head gaskets, and you're looking at $2,000 to $3,000. My LC100 at 200,000+ miles with a head gasket, I paid $9 grand to have the whole top end rebuilt. Now, it's an investment because I don't plan to get rid of that Landcruiser. That's going to last me another couple 100,000 miles. Guess how many miles are on this? 320,000 miles on this. So the first thing I think is, oh, the head gasket is about to go. Some things that you could check for the head gaskets, radiator cap. You could check this to make sure it's not slimy and gross. You can see that's topped off pretty good. There's no issues right there. If you see anything that looks slimy, that's a good indication. Also, these things will start eating up coolant before they go out. Another thing to look for is how many times does this thing overheat? I have been in an FZJ80 that had a blown head gasket while I was driving it, but all the indications were there. And that's a good rule of thumb just to investigate, just to make sure that it's good to go. It will start overheating. You'll have temperature issues. You'll start seeing sludge in the radiator. And before you know it, you'll lose the top end of this. Another way to check it is to check the oil cap and make sure there's no white sludge on here, which is an indication that it's going, and that looks pretty clean. My suspicion is that it's already been through a new top end, but I'm just putting that out there. 320,000 miles is extraordinarily high, but it's not uncommon to see them go that long without blowing a head gasket, as long as they're being taken care of. Another thing is obviously the oil. You want to make sure the oil is a good color. That looks pretty decent. I'll wipe that off. I'll stick it in again and pull it out. That's what he said. And then make sure I'm good. So not overflowed with oil. It's about 3/4. You see the F, that means full, and it looks good. It's not sludgy. It doesn't look like mud. It's a good color, so I'm good with that. Another thing you want to check out is the transmission fluid on a FZJ80. It's down here. I think it's on the other side on a FJ80. which is the earlier models, stay away from those. 91, 92, not your friend. Even 93, 94, they did a lot of upgrades and improvements, and you get 95 and above, and you're getting pretty dialed in. Remember, 97 is the last year of the most epic Landcruiser ever built. Fingers are fat. All right, here we go. So I haven't checked this yet, but let me wipe that down. This is supposed to be red transmission fluid. Let me shove that back in the hole and get a fresh look at it. There we go. My friends over at Landcruiser Outfitters, Kurt Williams and the guys, I'm very lucky to have them in my backyard because they're the experts at all Landcruisers. I'm probably going to do what I can do on this vehicle by myself with my basic mechanic skills. Looks pretty good. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera if it's showing up pretty good, but the color's good. No concerns there. So transmission fluid looks pretty good. Another thing just to check is power steering fluid and brake fluid, just to make sure the TLC, that tender loving care, has been maintained. One of the things I asked before I picked this vehicle up is, when's the last time you changed the diff fluid? These differentials, you can get away with neglecting them for a while, but man, that's where the money's at in these vehicles. And I'll go over that here in a second. I'm gonna check power steering fluid. Right color should be red. If it's not, you need to look at that. He did tell me that this reservoir was replaced at one point. So I could see the valve cover now because it's not covered in oil. I spent a lot of time with some degreaser degreasing this. I could tell it's got a new radiator in it. This is fairly new. This would be pretty corroded. Good fan, spinning fan. Everything looks good. Lastly, I might check under the engine, in the engine bay. I might check this. I've already popped this. This looks good. It's nice and clean. One of the first things that I'm gonna do in modification, just talking about this part of it, is I am going to change all the gaskets and I'm gonna get a snorkel put on this thing. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, those snorkels are so stupid. You're never gonna go in a river. Most people who are on the East Coast, east of the Mississippi, don't really understand this, but out west where it's really dusty and you have this baby powder fine sand, that is a problem off-roading in these areas. So if you're just sucking up all the cold air from the fender, which is where the air gets rammed into, which comes through here and then goes to the filter system, which provides the air into the engine, that could be problematic, which is why a lot of people in the West adapt snorkels to collect air from the top of the higher away from the ground, where these 35s are going to pick up a lot of dust and dirt. So not concerned with rust, little rust sections like this. This is all surface rust. You want to be careful because you want to make sure that the rust isn't eating through the metal, because that could be problematic. But again, surface areas, even on areas of the body, not a big deal. Now, I see this bumper right here and it's got surface rust on it. This to me is a bonus. I'm probably going to go with a aftermarket set of bumpers, which is going to break my budget. Likely from Slee. I love their stuff. Front, rock sliders, and rear. But this is kind of a bonus. I could pull this, I could clean this, sand it, and paint it, and likely sell it on Marketplace, and that's an added bonus. Things like this is super common to find on these years. It's as easy as pulling it, plastic dipping it, or spraying it. I'm just gonna rattle can it and it'll be good as brand new. I will replace this hood. This is already eaten through. It would be more work for me to repair this than just to pick up a hood used on Marketplace or at the salvage yard. Plenty of these in salvage. This is kind of what I'm most excited about. When I first look at these vehicles, the number one priority is underneath the hood. The second priority is underneath the carriage. I want to make sure that there's not rust on the frame. And if there is rust, surface rust, that's acceptable, making sure there's not spots where it's eaten through. So let's take a look underneath the vehicle. So I'm underneath the vehicle and frame, looking at the frame, there's surface rust in the seams. This is super common. It can be easily fixed, but don't be tricked. A lot of people take these frames, they'll rattle can them, and then you'll get in here with a screwdriver and start poking around and you'll punch through the frame. That is a rig, in my opinion, you want to stay away from. Unless you have the equipment and the knowledge and skill set to repair things like that, which are repairable to an extent, I would stay away from it. I do not want to deal with rust through the frame especially. This frame looks pretty good. There's surface rust, which I think I'm going to do the ice thing and then do the POR 15. We'll see. Then I want to look at the differentials. This is a real good indication whether or not this thing has been maintained. I could see there's oil all over the oil pan. A lot of that's been degreased by me. It still has oil, but that's okay. That's some minor stuff. Those are minor concerns for me. It's got an old EMU kit. I could tell by its, oh, it says old man EMU. That's a way to tell. But usually they're yellow. And then the old EMU shocks, you'll always find surface rust on these shocks. I've had old EMU kits on Jeeps, Landcruisers, all kinds of things. And very quickly, surface rust accumulates on these things. I'm not a fan of Old Man Emu on my rig builds because it's a budget kind of consideration. If I want to make this really capable, I'm going to put Dobinson, which is an Australian company, which I have on my LC100 and the guys from Landcruiser Outfitters installed. It's the best. So I look at this differential where the lockers would be, and I could tell that this has been pulled before. It likely has fluid in it, but I'm going to check. That's like one of my number one priorities for maintenance in these vehicles, is making sure these differentials and the lockers that are in them are well maintained. And it looks well maintained. Underneath, it doesn't look bad. Now, one thing I noticed out the bat on my test drive is it does have an exhaust leak. It's likely in the downpipe coming off the header. That's a problem for emissions. I'm in Wasatch County in Utah. We don't have emissions tests. But that's a huge problem in these older vehicles that could be dangerous. If you have an exhaust leak and you neglect it, and then you have a compromise in the floor plans of this vehicle, you potentially could get carbon monoxide poisoning. Guys who sleep in these things, which is easy to do for camping, it would be beneficial for you to examine these exhausts to make sure they're good and to make sure you're not getting exhaust fumes leaking up into the cab. That happened in my Jeep and it's super scary. Don't neglect that, especially if you intend, which I do, to have your family inside these rigs. So we got wheels and tires. A lot of guys love 35s and 37s on these rigs. And look, I get it. 35s is a good balance to get all of the drivetrain off the ground to give you clearance. If you air down these tires properly, you're gonna get a maximum traction patch and you're gonna have plenty of clearance to be able to do whatever you want. The cool thing about having a front solid axle in these vehicles, as opposed to independent front suspension, which you get in the LC100 series, is you get more articulation in the suspension. And the drawback is it's not as comfortable on the road. What I found in 80s is they're really solid on the road regardless. The downfall is the weak engine. The engine is a dog. So the first instinct is to load this down with a lot of weight. You want to put the bumper set, you want to put the roof rack, you want to put the rooftop tent, you want to put the goose gear stuff in the back. I'm all about that life. Problem with that with an 80 series is it's just going to bog you down. What I intend to do, probably a little later, is to do a Toyota factory supercharger. Now, these things came as a factory option from the dealership. The option to add those, you could find them used. I'm going to see if I could add that to this to get past that bump. The alternative is use the power button, which is an overdrive button that gives you a little bit more felt power by changing the gear ratio. The reason I mention that is because this particular vehicle, when I bought it, came with these Kendas. I've never heard of Kenda. You guys might be making fun of me because you're like, dude, you never heard of Kenda? I've heard of Kenya, but I've never heard of Kenda, okay? So these are Steelies. I'm a big fan of Steelies, but they got a lot of surface rust. And on 35s with a more narrow tread patch, I think I'm gonna opt to put on my 33s. So these are 35 by 10.5. He wanted to run more narrow wheels, which is popular, especially in Australia and overseas. And I think this is a good opportunity to take these and sell them off and put on what I already had a set of for my old Landcruiser. All right, so I'm deciding to put on my old methods that were on one of my old Landcruisers that are 305 by 70 by 16. Now, these are BF Goodwrench. It's a smaller tire set, but that means less weight. And also these methods are aluminum alloy. They're gonna be light. So I'm gonna choose to put these on. A lot of people wouldn't agree with that, but where I'm willing, where there's a lot of gravel, this is the tire that I want to have on. And I just think they're gonna look a lot better than those Steelies. I'm not against Steelies. I think Steelies are actually really cool on certain kinds of vehicles. Like even this first gen Runner, having these Steelies on there is pretty cool and old school. But to get them dressed up proper, I would have to do a lot of work. I'm just gonna sell them and then take that cash and invest it into the build. All right, so first and foremost, part of the magic in this is I did a VIN Carfax inspection and there's no accidents. And the body, super straight. I mean, there's not a lot of damage to the overall body. There is rust spots, which is common in this vehicle, especially where the seat belts are mounted through the actual body of the vehicle. And on the underside, what you'll get is rust protruding through there, in the wheel wells especially. But in this particular one, it's really decent as far as the overall rust. So the body is really straight. The interior is okay. I'll just call it okay. I've seen worse. This, obviously a problem. I mean, I know out the gate that this FZJ80 has seat replacements because they didn't come with a cloth seat option. At least not that I know of. If you know they've come with a seat cloth option, let me know. The leather seats in these things always crack and fade, and you probably need to replace them. You could completely blow your budget. If you go with Corbo, you're looking at $500, $600, $700, $800 per set. Just the rails are nearly a couple $100 for the rails. I have Shillman seats in my 75 series and my LC100, and they're $2,600 a seat. It depends on your budget. It also depends on how you think about things. I'm one of the guys who thinks, man, I'll pay $10,000 for a mattress. Why? Because I sleep on it 8 hours a night, and I want the best mattress. But you got to strike the balance. I also have a bad back, and I can't afford to be in a seat for a long period of time. If you have the budget, Shillman seats, I think, are the best seats made. I just don't know in this particular build if I'm going to go with Shillman's, but I'm certainly going to replace these seats. Now, here's where the magic is. This is the magic spot, this little guy right here. What this is the ability to go to rear differential and both front and rear differential. What happens in this particular situation with this model, it's all time four-wheel drive. When you put it in neutral and then put it in 4 low, it automatically locks the center diff. Actually, let me just show you. That's a better way. You'll hear this exhaust leak out the... So that loud sound, you shouldn't have a loud sound like that. So it's a little louder than it's supposed to be. Check engine light, that's probably from the exhaust leak. So when I take the vehicle, I put it in neutral, put it in 4 low, you see it's locked with the center. And then I take this and I push it in and pop it all the way over. And then when you might have to put it in drive, let it go just a little bit, put it in reverse, let it go just a little bit. All right, so what you got right there is the rear diff and front diff. It needs to move forward a little bit to lock up. But what you have is a triple locked from the factory Landcruiser. Now, just a little bit about lockers. An open differential is not gonna give you the traction capability you need off-road, because if you're off traction and you have one wheel that's getting traction, the other wheel is just going to spin freely. You need both wheels spinning simultaneously to give you traction to the ground. You'll get that across the axle and the differential, front, center, and rear. Just a little bit about lockers. It just gives you more capability off-road where you typically would slip in an open differential. You'll get both wheels moving in the right direction and get traction and power transferred to the ground. Having a triple locked vehicle is super rare. They have them in T3 Synchros, for example. But when you look at Landcruiser's capability with a front, center, and rear differential locker from the factory, it saves you a lot of money, especially if they work. Of note, a lot of people put in this button as an accessory to make it look like it's triple locked, and they're not connected. Or the lockers are bad because it's electronic differential lockers. You need to make sure that they work. So one of the first things I did was I took it into a dirt field, put it on, and made sure that it worked. An indication that it's working is it's binding in the steering wheel. You won't get a lot of turning radius out of a locked front differential. And also on the rear end, also you could hear it chirp. Those are signs and indications besides getting it off-road and testing it. But a triple locked Landcruiser is like the unicorn. I think about 10% of the overall market was triple locked. So if you find one, hold on to it. Let me show you a little bit about the interior, because a lot of these things, you could lose a lot of money and value when the interior is shot to and I won't cuss because I want this to be available for kids. So what I did immediately is I looked at the interior to see how good of a shape it was and to make sure that there was no compromising of the floor and fumes going up through this leaky exhaust. I'm gonna have my family in here. I don't wanna risk fumes getting into this cab anytime. I don't care if we're driving down the road. I just don't wanna risk it. So the first thing I did was pull the carpets and clean them. And then I looked at this. So this is that tarry material that's used for deadening sound and is really good for doing so. If you have this and it's intact, keep it. The problem with the rear end of this that I've already discovered is that this guy spilled oil somewhere. You can see it right here. That oil has saturated and soaked into this, which means I gotta remove this. Even cleaning it, you can see it right here. I just pushed it with my finger how easy it was to break out, that's a good indication it's bad. And then that's no problem. I'll just get it down to bare metal. I'll prep it, and then I'll put down sound deadening material, and then we'll put down a new carpet set. New carpet sets for these vehicles cost anywhere from $300 to $500, and you get what you pay for. If you get a cheap carpet set, you're gonna have to do cutting and modifications, and it's gonna be a pain. I would opt in to get the good carpet set right out the box, okay? This FZJ80 came with rear seats, which were in it, completely shot. I have to get a new set of rear seats. And it came with a third row. That's a bonus. A lot of people throw away those third rows because they want to have a camping setup and it's just a dude and a dog. That lonely life, I get it, but don't throw those out. Those are actually worth a lot of money. And this one came with those. What you'll often find in these third row seats is they're in good condition because they're not really used. They hang up. You see that bar up there? That's that handle. The way they stow is they fold up and then you hook them right there and then you can get them out of the way. So if you already have them in your Landcruiser, just keep them in there. For my LC100, I have them in my storage container and I'll never get rid of them because they're valuable when you go to sell or if you have more kids or whatever you're into. Animals, more cats. What I suspect, if we can see it right here, is this is good. Yep. You can see the transition of like soaked in oil and this is good. So I'll try to retain this carpet if I can and maybe just do a real carpet set. Something that concerns me already, and I see it, I don't know if you guys see it, is this little guy right here, this cancer right here. You see that bubbling? That concerns me because that is likely bubbling from the bottom through the metal. Take a look at that. You guys think that's cancer or rust underneath that? Let me know in the comments down below. I've never seen the bubbling like that unless it was cancer, but it could be heat, but I've just never noticed that before. So compared to that, where there's no rust underneath it, that looks like there could be rust. We'll see. Interior components look pretty good. Seeing cracks on the dash, that's not a big deal. What I want to make sure is these pieces are intact, and they are. This is pretty complete. Even the center console looks really good. It even clicks in and locks in. That's very rare to have these intact, especially in this condition. So this dude who had this with 320,000 miles wheeled the hell out of this rig, but I'm satisfied with what I see so far. All right, let me show you these rear seats. Look at this rear seat. Very good condition. So just needs a cleaning. So we're gonna do some soap and water. Nothing crazy. You don't want to put a lot of chemicals on this leather. And then we're gonna leather treat it. You'll nearly have like brand new third row seats. Now let's do the same for this. And yeah, this isn't treatable. Now, it's probably going to be more expensive to take this to a upholstery shop and get it reupholstered. You could just throw on a canvas material cover, but I don't like those canvas material covers. What I'll do is just get a used set somewhere and it's likely going to be cheaper than getting these refinished, okay? So definitely shot, definitely blown out. That's what she said. All right, so lifted the carpet here. Really expected to see this worse off than it is. Not too big of a deal. So I'm super excited about this build. So number one is TLC. We got to go through all the maintenance, make sure it's good to go. And we'll start fixing the little things. Then I'm going to get the wheels mounted. That's going to be next. So wheels mounted, TLC and maintenance, and then carpet set. And then we'll get into building this thing out. I'm going to show you guys on my Patreon, which I'll link down below, how I load out this rig with all the preparedness, mobility stuff in mind. I'm talking about first aid, maintenance, recovery, even your speedball. If you don't know what that is, subscribe to my patreon.com/Mike Glover, and the link's down below, and I'll tell you all about it. Until next time, peace out, guys.